What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Crush Live Call-Ins. I'm your host here, Bart Hanson, and we do this show every single Monday at 4:45 p.m. Pacific time. And if you want to call in your hand, do me a favor and pre-submit it, Bart at crushlivepoker.com, Bart at crushlivepoker.com. And I always give priority to Crush Live Poker subscribers. I had a ton of submissions this week. I probably turned down 10 hands. That's part of the reason why we do these pre-submissions, because it was a lot of low-stakes, cooler spots. And before we didn't sort of screen them ahead of time, it was getting a little bit ridiculous. So I'm glad that we do it this way now. Like I said, if you're interested in getting on the show, do me a favor and shoot me an email, Bart at crushlivepoker.com. I'm in the live chat here. We've got 6 calls on tap here for today. So let's get into it here. And let's go to Alan, who is our first caller. Alan in the Bay Area. What's up, Alan?
Hey, Bart. How's it going?
Good. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. And so here is my hand playing at the Oaks Card Club in Emeryville. It's 235 no limit, $1,000 buy-in cap.
Okay.
And this is a rockin' sockin' good game with a winner straddle, which is straddles it to $10 in any position, and by agreement among the players, it's the winner of the previous pot who's straddling.
So rock straddle, sort of, right? Rock
Yeah,
straddle.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a rock straddle, but
Yep.
with money rather than a rock.
Mm-hmm.
And in this particular case, the straddle is on the button.
So is the straddle for 10 then?
The straddle is for 10.
Okay, so 10 straddle. Okay.
And let's got the hand here. The small blind folds, big blind calls, 3 more callers in the field, and the low jack to my immediate left calls. He's the villain in the hand. He's kind of a fish on a heater, doing all kinds of crazy things and getting there, and the game has been pretty wild, and he's gotten himself a large stack.
Okay.
Covering me. I'm in the cutoff after these 5 limpers. I've got pocket jacks, the jack of hearts and the jack of clubs.
Okay. So 5
and
limps to you, jacks. Okay.
I make it 80 straight.
Okay.
The cutoff folds. I said I was in the hijack, right?
You said you're in the cutoff.
Yeah, I was in the hijack. The cutoff folds. The button, who is the straddler, calls.
Okay.
Big blind folds. Under the gun calls. Other people fold, and the player to my immediate right, the fish on the heater, calls. And so there's like 320 from live money in the pot, plus another 40 in dead money.
Okay, so it's 4 ways, bunch of limpers, button straddle, so it goes in order. Big blind limps, 3 or 4 limps. You make it 80 with jacks. Button calls, big blind, button calls, UTG calls, LJ calls. So these 2 guys to your right are both limpers. They don't fare to have really good hands, and you see it 4 ways, right, with jacks. Pot 320. Okay.
Right. The flop comes 9 of clubs, 8 of clubs, 4 of diamonds.
9, 8, 4 with 2 clubs. You've got jacks with the jack of clubs. And what are around the stacks? Is everybody around 1,000?
The button straddle has a small stack, like 300 or 400. I don't remember precisely what the under the gun had, but the low jack had some like 4,000.
Okay. And how deep are you?
I've got 1,500.
Okay. All right. Great. That gives us a little. So about 1,500 effective. You got a shorty in there. Low jack has 4K. Button's got 300. All right. 984. Okay.
And under the gun checks.
Mm-hmm.
And then low jack bets 100.
Okay.
And I'm next to act. I've got a player who hasn't acted yet and a player who's checked to act after me. It's the kind of lousy configuration.
Yep.
And my dilemma here is, do I flat call here, or do I raise to clean up overcard outs?
Yeah, so I'm going to assume that the under the gun probably has something like less than 1,000 or something like that. We'll just make that assumption because the stack size is just to visualize. So the pot is really bloated up here. So it's like 420 now when he bets 100. So with the button being so short and the SPR with the under the gun guy being so short, I'm not really overly concerned about like opening my stack up per se to those guys. So if this low jack is fishy and you'd like to get some money in with him, I have absolutely no problem raising because everyone else is going to have like a pot size bet left. You're never going to fold anyways, right? I mean, if someone's flopped a set, someone's flopped a set. So he bet really small. If you call, you're going to inherently be giving people like 4 or 5 to 1 behind you. I have absolutely no problem here with a raise, and I might make it 350 to 400 or something like that.
What I actually did was I mulled over. I ruled out folding,
Well,
and
of course.
I didn't like calling and letting people in, and I didn't like raising. And that bad configuration, but I decided that raising was least worst, and I made it. I tripled the bet, so I made it 300, which maybe was a little low.
Okay.
But
and I'm assuming that the button in UTG fold.
They both folded.
Okay.
And that was the real my real concern in the hand was that spot there. The rest of it just kind of played out the way it played out. Well, tell it for the listeners. The turn came.
So low jack calls, right? Low jack calls.
Low jack calls.
Yep.
There's a lot of money in the pot.
920.
Yep.
Yep.
And the turn is the 3 of spades, which looks like a blank to me.
Sure.
Looks like a brick.
Yep.
The villain checks. I bet 300. And then he takes a stack full of $100 chips, not more than a stack, like 25, 26 $100 chips, and just puts them in front of him. An overbet that puts me all in. I've got $1,100 left.
So you bet 300 on the turn, which is, again, pretty small. You're matching the raise size, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're saying that you have 1,100?
I bet 500 on the turn.
Oh, 500. Okay, 500. So I thought you had bet 300. So you bet 500. So you have, what, like according to this, about 700 left after the 500? Or were you actually a little bit deeper?
I was...
If you have 1,100 left...
Yeah, it was 700 left. Yeah, that's
700.
That's right.
Okay. Well, then you can never fold then, obviously, right? I mean, the pot's going to be 26-7 for you to call. I mean, I thought that you had bet 300 at first, and I'm like, well, he might be doing something. But, I mean, this is really strange. I mean, if the guy's a fish and he's leading out on the flop, and then he just calls to check raise a sort of a dynamic turn board, then more power to him. But there's really not much you can do. There's no way I'm folding here, especially if it's a fish. Maybe he ran into like 8-3 suited or some bullshit like that, 9-3 suited. I'm assuming you called?
I eventually decided I couldn't fold there, so I called. He showed me 4 of hearts, tray of hearts.
4 of hearts, tray of hearts. So
nice hand.
He called with he bet called with bottom pair and then turned 2 pair. I mean,
yes.
Like I said, the pot's 2,600, 700 for you to call. You're getting 4 to 1. I can't imagine possibly laying this down. It is somewhat of a strong play to get check raised on the turn as the pre-flop raiser, but at this point, I don't think you did anything wrong. I mean, you'd have to have some sort of crazy history to fold there, getting an overpair, getting those pot odds. It's just, I feel like the 3 has to connect with his hand in order for, if he's going to play like 9-8 or a set like this, more power to him. I think it's pretty rare. And he didn't have that. You just got unlucky, basically. You know?
Yeah. And the point of the call isn't, do I call on that check raise? The point of the call is, what the hell do I do on that flop?
I have no problem raising. Again, I think the stack sizes are very dependent here about the other players in the hand. You don't necessarily have to raise to like clean up like over cards, as somebody in the live chat put out. But I mean, still like 100 into 320. I mean, you're probably going to bet maybe 100 to 150 anyways. It's just, yeah, you've got the jack of clubs, so you block a fair amount of the straight draws. But if the guy's a fish, you're getting your value. You just ended up getting unlucky. You know what I'm saying? If it's a solid player that leads multi-way, then obviously you can definitely play more cautiously. That's the beautiful thing about live poker, right? We need to make these deviations based upon the player. But I appreciate the call, Alan. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
All right, let's go to England here. By the way, if you are out of the country, there's a way for you to connect to the. I do this via like an online conference. So this gentleman here, Nathan, connected on his computer from. Are you really from Sunderland, which is up by Newcastle?
I am, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't Sunderland have a Division 1 football team that used to make the Premier League sometimes? I lived in England for a couple of years. I remember that.
Yeah, they've been relegated the past couple of seasons, so they're down in League One now.
League One, which is the second league?
Yeah.
Or is that the third league now?
Third league,
shit.
yeah.
You know, we don't have any of that shit in American sports. If you guys can imagine, like, the Knicks getting relegated to the CBA, basically, or, like, the Yankees having an off year and going to play AAA the next year. It just doesn't happen. It's amazing to me how it happens in British sports because you guys are playing in the same stadium, right? It's the same stadium when they were in the Premier League, and now they're in Division 3?
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Anyways, you got a hand for us, right?
Yeah, I got a hand from a 1-1 game I played in, and sort of split opinions between me and my friends. So it's a 1-1. We're pretty deep, about 400 big blinds.
400
Um,
pounds deep.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. In this particular hand, though, it's double straddle, so it's 1-1-2-4.
Oh wow, double straddle. Okay. In
Yeah,
front though, right? In front.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Folded round to the cut off, who's the main villain. I haven't played with him too much. Seems a pretty solid player.
Yep.
He raises the 18.
Okay. So you got your 400 pounds deep, right?
Yeah,
Okay. Raises up
yeah.
to 18. Okay.
On the button with 9 of hearts, 10 of hearts.
Okay.
I decided here just a flat. Typically, I would three bet this from sort of early versus early, but I didn't know if in the later positions it's just a flat or with the full blind configuration if I should be three betting this.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've done a fair amount of work on. I've talked about it quite a bit. Also, too, sometimes on top section as well. Um, on our premium podcast. Because PKC plays like a three blind configuration, and they do that also too in the Bay Area as well. You're supposed to flat a lot of hands on the button with more dead money in there, so
Yeah,
there's actually more of a balance to actually flat some of these hands, and sometimes
yeah,
flat traps in an ante configuration here too. And you're correct in the approach of driving people out behind you if you were in earlier position. I bet this is a mix of a three bet and a call, but it's certainly more of a flat on the button
yeah.
than like an early, like you
Up
said,
front.
early versus early. So you make the also too. You're dealing with an extreme scenario. Was this pot always straddled like this, or was this like a one-off?
There's probably, I would say, at least a single straddle on sort of, three
Okay.
out of eight, 3 times in orbit, and then occasionally a double straddle.
So
So,
so if it's occasionally a double straddle, the hand's going to play pretty big, and you're going to get into some
yeah,
awkward scenarios if you were to three bet to 60 or something like that. So
yeah.
I mean I have no problem. All right, so you call.
I call.
Yep.
One of the blind calls, big blind calls. So we see it three-way to the flop. I think there's about £60 in the pot.
Okay.
Flop is 6 of spades, 8 of hearts, 10 of spades.
Okay, so
So
you've got
flop,
top pair and a gutter to a
top
seven with
pair,
the eight of hearts
good
out there.
shot.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Big blind checks.
Mm-hmm.
Cut off bets 22.
Okay.
I decide to flat, and the big blind calls as well.
So he's betting 22 here into 60. Is that right?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is interesting here because you've got obviously like a top pair hand. You've got a gut shot.
yeah.
You have some backdoors. The sizing at these levels seems kind of small. I don't know what your experience is with this player pool. If people tend to, they're not
People they're
I
definitely
mean,
not
this
using.
doesn't represent like kings or aces a lot of times at like a 1-1 game. People are going to really
No,
want to protect quite a bit. You've got that
yeah,
other guy in the hand here too. So, the times that I would raise in a spot like this would be for a protection and also two as a semi bluff. I would think we can throw the semi bluff out the window. You don't really need to do that. But if you had, for example, a hand like, you know, 6, 7 of hearts or some shit like that, you
yeah.
might want to raise to drive out the big blind. 9, 10 as a call, I think, is fine too. When you're dealing with small sizing and multi-way pots, you don't get to raise as much with just a top pair as you do sometimes heads up. So I think it's fine. So call. Pot now is 106, right?
125.
Oh, 66. Oh, 125. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
So turn is the queen of diamonds.
Okay. Queen of diamonds. So now you pick up a double gutter, is that right? To a jack into
Yeah.
a 7? Okay.
Big blind
Mm-hmm.
checks. Cut off bets sort of 35-40, so less than a third pot size bet.
Yep.
And I was going to go for a raise here.
Yep.
I, as it played, I decided a flat, which I think was a mistake.
So let's talk. And what did the big blind fold or call?
The big blind folded.
All right. So this is interesting here because we're going to have to do some math with the stack sizes because the pot's
Yeah.
getting big here. So 35 in a 125, which is certainly a weak bet.
Yeah.
And 160, when you call, it's going to be 200. So it looks like you've got like 300 left. You've got like over 300 when he bets 35.
I think I got about 330 something
Yeah,
like that left, and
I like
he's got about the same.
I like a raise here a lot.
Yeah,
I do. I like a raise here a lot. This sizing is, he could have a 10 that he's continuing to bet. He could have a hand like
yeah,
jacks, I guess. He could have run into a queen. I think you're going to get a lot of those hands to fold. The other thing too is that you will occasionally drive out the big blind that might have a better hand than you in the form of like a
yeah,
better 10, because you'll see guys at the low stakes, like they'll call thinking pot odds, like they think of it the opposite way, like they're supposed to defend tighter here, right? 35 on the turn call, you're probably supposed to be folding out your tens as an overcall from the big blind, but a guy will look at this at the low stakes and they'll be like, oh, the pot odds, I'm going to call. So you drive that out. You clean up those hands. It's a pretty strong semi bluff. And you've got stack depth. Like I might make this
100.
125 to 150,
Yeah,
shape it to look like you're going to put in
okay.
a nice sort of river shove, and then you can decide. But I think you're going to get a lot of immediate folds right now. But okay, so you flat. So the pot's now
Decided. Yeah,
195, right?
195. Yeah,
Yep.
and the river is the king of spades.
The river is the king of spades. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cutoff checks.
So the cutoff checks now. Yep.
Yeah. I'm left with a decision to either check behind with third pair
You
or make a bet here. I've
well,
got
you
three,
have
two, five.
you've got 325 left.
Yeah.
325.
Decided to turn my hand into a bluff, and I went all in.
Wow, you went all in. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we get into a theoretical concept, right? Which sometimes doesn't necessarily hold that much what weight at the low stakes, is that if you want to polarize, you
Yeah.
want to give your opponent like less of a price here. So, and the issue that I have is that it's 10-6-8, right, with two spades, right? And now so the river came in the front door spade, is that right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sometimes, sort of the issue here is that people will think, well, why is he betting so much if he made a flush? But I definitely think that you should turn your hand into a bluff here for sure. When you had first emailed this in, I thought it was an offsuit king. And if it was an offsuit king, I don't like a shove because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people will call with like missed spades, but you could sort of make a more modest bet still turning your hand into a bluff. But with this spade here, I just wonder if you were to bet something more like 125, 150, if that sort of deceptively works better at the low stakes than a theoretical bet of all in to polarize to a flush
Yeah.
plus.
So
Because
it looks stronger betting less.
if you had like a jack nine or a straight type of hand here, let's say that you were slow playing and you made the nuts on the turn, like are you jamming spades at, when the spade comes at the end? I definitely would turn my hand into a bluff here for sure. The question is for what
Yeah.
sizing. So you bet 325, and what ended up happening?
He tanked for a while, and he eventually called with aces, with the ace of spades.
So
He had a good blocker.
so hijack calls with or cutoff calls
Yeah.
with ace of spades X. That's kind of interesting because this is, again, it sort of goes to show you when you sort of polarize here. Like if you were to, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Still
okay.
here.
Yeah, it kind of, it's interesting because it kind of goes to show you like when you polarize, like yeah, you could have queen X of spades here too, I guess some of the time, which would be a queen high flush draw.
Yeah.
But when he has the ace of spades and you're representing only the spade, then he's got to try to figure out what bluffs that you have here too. You know what I mean? So you'd almost
Yeah.
have to be turning a hand into a bluff, which is quite possible. Like say you had like queen jack, but a lot of people don't do that at the low stakes. And
Yeah.
again, for this particular spot, I wonder if you had bet less if you would have thought about it more. It's kind of interesting that he used such small sizing here, though. I mean, that's not something you see every day at 1-1.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call, Nathan.
Thanks, Bart. Thanks.
All right, cool. All right, one of my favorite guys. Next caller here, Jesse the Suit, calling from the Washington, D.C. area. Jesse, have you been back home to Boston and all and checked out the Encore?
I have not been back home to the Encore yet. I don't think I'm going to be going there until December when I'm in town for the holidays.
Oh, okay. Yeah, me too. We might see each other there. I'm looking forward to going back. They seem to have a lot lot of games over there. I mean, when I look on Bravo, there's like 18 2-5 games, 5-5-10 games, maybe 2 10-20s, and the 25-50. You just wonder how invaded it's been with Euros or just with professionals that might have moved. I had heard, Jesse, that some of the guys that play at MGM sort of hightailed it up there. I don't know if you noticed
had moved up there.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen a great difference, but I'd heard that from like a lot of the regs who moved back and forth. And I mean, I've heard from a couple of people that the games are not that good, but like, you know, they're people in a poker room, so who the fuck knows? But I couldn't really say. I haven't been up there. I know Josh Kitterino has played up there, and he says it's sort of hit or miss. So, you know, I don't really know. Yeah. Definitely worth checking out, though.
No, for sure. Also, Jesse has, if you CLP subscribers, Jesse has me on a new hobby in Discord, which is giving shit to a certain person in Discord by the name of Z. So, anyways. All right, you got a hand for us?
I was about to say, I give shit to so many people in Discord. It's hard to tell. Yeah, no. So I got a quick hand. It's 2-5 again, but we have the straddle on this hand.
Okay.
Sort of. It definitely has not been a consistent thing. We've been doing a couple of rounds of straddles. This was one of the straddle rounds. Okay. So, guy limps in early position. I'm on the button with 8-7 of hearts. I ISO 240.
How deep are you guys?
About 1K effective.
All right, so one limp from early position. You raise 7-8 of hearts to 40 on the button. You know what's interesting? Obviously, this is, I think, is a slam dunk ISO. I used to go, so, you know, if you guys are been with me for a long time, things change with the things change with some of my approaches to, you know, games and things like that. And I think a lot has changed pre-flop. One of the things that I talk about, or that I have in the past, which is probably still generally true for a lot of low stakes players, is once two people limp in, I tend to not ISO unless I've got a hand that is like good enough to raise an early position, right? Like, you know, your early position raises hands. Now with direct suited connectors, actually, because I played a session at 5-5 at the Hustler, and I noticed this, like with a really good suited connector, and I'm not talking about gapped ones, but I'm talking about direct, because they flop much better. I can get on board actually now with making multi-way ISOs with direct suited connectors, like 3 people limp in a hand like 6-7 suited to try to get it heads up, 5-6 suited, something like that, as opposed to what I used to do, which would be like an overlimp. The small pocket pairs, those ones don't really, I feel like are a little bit counterintuitive to ISO in a spot like that. Like, I'm not a huge fan. They don't flop well, and you can still build anyways, right? Post if you flop a set. But with these direct suited connectors where you've got barreling and you're structuring barreling, I can get on board sometimes with multi ISOing. But here, I think it's a no-brainer. So you make it 40 on the button, 7-8 of hearts. Yep.
I make it 40 on the button, and the small blind calls.
So the small blind calls, okay. So cold call from
small blind calls, limper fold.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Straddle, limper fold. Everybody else is out.
Yep.
So we get a good board for my range, if not for my hand, which is King 10 with 1 heart.
King 10 with 1 heart. Okay.
Yep. Checks to me. This is almost certainly a board that I think I would range bet with, at least against the blind, because it's just so hard for them to have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they tend to overfold. They're sort of like ace high, like overcard type hands.
Yeah.
And even the small pairs. I think people are usually just going to piece out because it's just so difficult to have something. So I bet 40, which is probably like a little bit larger than I should, sort of in theory, but I think we'll get the job done.
Let me ask you a question here. Because when you emailed this in, so you're betting 40 into about 90 or so. So when you take a look at a flat calling range of somebody in the small blind, I mean, I don't know if this guy's a fish, but let's say he's like somewhat reasonable, whatever. I mean, most players are going to be losing players at the level. What do you look at? What kind of range is that as a flat call in the small blind you look at usually in this configuration?
I mean, it's gonna be a lot of pairs.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be some suited aces probably, and some suited broadways.
Okay, and I tend to,
and maybe offsuit broadways.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. And so when you look at that range, now obviously you've got a little bit of backdoor, and I know the board is good for you. But when you, and
Mhm.
especially if people are a little bit heavy with the offsuit broadways, what about making a delayed c bet here? Because all the pairs that are below a 10, right? It's not like they're going to suddenly bluff. I feel like this particular board is a situation where you might risk less by checking back and then just folding to a bet on the turn, as opposed
Yeah.
and then just betting the turn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's such a sort of an extreme, and again, I don't really think that a lot of players are at this level are really gonna start bluffing just because you check back turn, because people are always thinking that you're slow playing something, right? Tens, ace, king, something like that. So when I first looked at this hand, I thought it was a real ripe for delayed c betting. But okay, so you bet 40.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good point, that there certainly are merits to delay c betting
Yeah.
a board that's this static and high. But in any event, he calls, and we get the ace of hearts on the turn.
So the pot right now is about 170-ish, right?
Yes. And he donks 75.
Wow, he donks for 75. That's fucking weird, huh?
Yes. That is what I thought.
Let me ask you a question. So again, it's king, king, 10 rainbow with one heart. You make a c bet with 7, 8 of hearts, small blind calls, turns the ace of hearts. What if he were to check here on the turn?
If he was to check the turn, I think probably what I would do is bet a decent size on the turn, and then if he calls, that's it.
You know,
Like,
it's interesting that you say that, because I look at this spot again on the turn. If I had started a c bet on the flop, I might delay double barrel the turn, because you certainly have enough really strong hands here that credibly would play, like, as people think, as a slow play in the form of ace king or pocket aces. And when you look at that type of range that the guy calls with on the flop, let's say that he's slow playing a king, he has queen jack, he has a 10. He's just going to check to you on the river, and you can bet at the end. Like, who the fuck takes a bluff? Who takes a bluff line here of bet, check, bet? I mean, if he's got like jack 10, is he going to call on a deuce river? You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of interesting.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting. Now, this donk lead here, that didn't happen, but interesting hand for different approaches for delays. This donk lead here at 75, that's really, really kind of weird, in the sense that if he's slow playing a king and he doesn't want the board to get scary, he's just coming out and betting, or he has queen jack, like, is he going to fold those types of hands? Like, what do you think this donk range consists of, basically?
I think it's most probable, it's possible that I'm being, like, sort of biased by the things that happen to them in the hand, but it kind of strikes me as he floated ace high and now doesn't know what to do.
I don't know, man. I mean, that would have to assume that he has ace jack and ace queen as a flat
ace jack
call,
or
and now he's
ace
betting,
nine or
but he's betting the turn though on king, king, 10. I feel like that's going to roll into like a check call type of thing. I mean, it looks like on the surface that obviously you have the nut advantage, right? Like, you have ace king,
right.
You have pocket aces. He doesn't. That's true. And that's why he's never supposed to bet this turn. But this is live poker, right? So we got to make an exploit on an exploit. I don't think he's folding the turn really here. This looks to be like queen jack or a king that's starting to get scared, and I don't think you're going to get him off of that unless you're going to do something crazy like make it, 300 and then ship the river. But that's not usually the best approach to winning at live poker, trying to get somebody off of trips. He's betting 75 into 170 here. I'm never going to look at the board, right? King, king, 10, ace. He doesn't really have a lot of boats, right? But based on pre-flop, he can't really have boats, right?
Yeah, he can't really have boats, and it's difficult to articulate. But I just don't think he has a king when he does this. Like, maybe, but it just seems so weird. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
if he had a nutted hand.
My initial reaction here is that, sometimes you can actually fold in this spot, but when you look at the distribution on the board, I'm not going to fold because I don't think he has boats here. And if he has a king or queen jack,
Right.
you're going to get paid, right? He's betting 75 and a 170, so you're immediately getting, 3-1. So I just think that I would call here. I mean, again, I could be off base just in my experience. Like, if I was playing in this Hustler game, oh, I had so much fun at Hustler. It was so quiet. Nobody really knew me. Not like the bike. The game was so easy. If this happened to me at Hustler at 5-5 last week, I think I would call and just try to hit my hand. But what'd you end up doing?
So based on my read, which may or may not be correct, that this doesn't strike me as a king. This strikes me as ace high or some kind of like weird pair. It's like trying to take control of the pot and ensure that it sees a river. And also just the disrespect I feel that he is donking into my board. I raised to 275.
Okay.
And he thinks for a minute and calls.
All right, so let me just recap the action for people that are listening on the podcast. And call. So you ISO 7-8 of hearts over a limper on the button to 40. Small blind calls only. Flop comes out king, king, 10, rainbow with 1 heart. Check. You bet 40. Small blind calls. Turns the ace of hearts. You pick up a flush draw. Small blind donk 75. You now raise to 275, right?
275.
And a call. So the guy calls. So the pot is 720, and it looks like you have about just under a pot size bet left, right? 700 or some shit like that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Now what are you thinking when he calls your turn, raise the turn?
Now I'm pretty sure that he doesn't have a king. I feel like a king or straight.
Why are you pretty sure he doesn't have a king? Because you think he would just jam all in with like king jack or like king queen here when you raise the turn? You could have tens. You can have ace king. You can have aces.
He could have a boat, but like he has to donk a boat. Like
I don't think he has a boat, but I don't think he has a boat, but I think a lot of your optimistic range of check call with ace high lead turn, I don't know, it might go out the window. But all right, what's the river?
It's conceivable. The river is an offsuit brick, 4 that doesn't bring in a flush draw.
Okay.
He checks. Now, even though theoretically, because basically what I've done when I raised the turn is I said, like, I have a good king or a boat.
Yeah.
It would be perfectly reasonable in theory to shove and just polarize myself.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I'm not actually in the but I'm not in the business of trying to get people to pull trips.
Right. I think I would just give up.
So instead,
So
instead, what I decided to do is bet 325 because I want him to fold an ace that he somehow calls with. And if he's got a king, he's never going to fold to any bet. If he's got queen jack, he's never going to fold to any bet.
So again, you are still going with the assumption that you think that he might have some ace X, and after you raise the turn and he called, that he's going to fold for a half a pot size bet. Now remember too, it's not like he is like, I don't think you see a lot of guys call with like, say for example, he's got like ace 6 suited with a backdoor. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's king, king, 10. The people at 2-5 don't call those $40 bets with those hands on king, king, 10. So now you have to actually look at this and like, in reality, the only real way for him to have just an ace is if it's ace 10, ace jack, and ace queen.
Right.
No
and ace jack and ace queen are top pairs and gutters.
Right.
People don't 3-bet pre.
Right. Okay. People don't 3-bet pre, so they'd have to check call lead turn, call your raise, and now fold at the end. I mean, kind of seems optimistic. But okay, so you bet 325.
And his card could not have hit the muck any faster.
So obviously he didn't have an ace.
I guess. I don't know. But he turbo folded.
Is it possible that he might have had 10x of hearts? I guess it's possible, right? King, king, 10 rainbow with the king of hearts.
I guess
the ace of hearts.
Could have 10x of hearts. He could have
queen 9 of hearts.
Queen 10 of hearts or queen jack.
Yeah.
He could have the pair in the gutter.
He's not going to have queen jack turbo mucking on the river, right? Queen jack's a
I mean,
straight. Yeah.
10 queen,
Yeah.
queen 10 and
Yeah.
jack 10. The middle pair that turns to gutter on the 8.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you got that portion of his range to fold. If those were his hands, you can see how few combos there are and how many more combos there are of king act. And if he's calling pre with offsuit broadways, he has a full 16 combos of queen jack. He's got king queen off, king jack off. That's
Right.
a lot of hands. It really crushes the.
But that's all inflected through the assumption about like what he does with those hands on the turn. Does he donk them?
No, that's
in
true.
my experience, these donks are like just very weak hands almost always.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you, Jesse.
Yep. Take it easy, man.
All right.
Bye.
Let's go to our next caller here in the LA area. Now, I have this shit down on my phone. This should be Quantum. What's up?
Hey, how are you, Bart?
Good. You still playing it? So I don't know if you heard me with Jesse. So, you know I'm doing my 5-5 challenge, and I know you play at the bike a lot.
Right.
And I take my wife down to play too because she enjoys it, and I like the quiet of HP and Hustler. But fuck, I mean, I know Legends is going on. I looked at Bravo on Saturday just to look at the bike, and they looked like there were 7 fucking 5-5 games going and like 2 5-10s. It must be a madhouse. It sort of gets like commerce over there. I don't know if you're there on Saturday, but.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, definitely the people are out. I don't know. There's no other time that the bike is as busy as it is right now in August.
And you like it like that, or do you like it more regular?
No, I definitely like it like that because when it's just like the bike regs, the games are kind of, I don't know.
Sometimes
they're not the best.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, the other thing too is that, man, it's a hard living. I mean, as good as the 5-5 games are in LA, and I played in a hell of a game at Hustler. If you just play in an average game, it's a tough fucking racket, right? Because of the drop, like $6 or $7. They're taking like a home game drop. They're taking more than a big blind to hand. It's insanity.
Yeah.
You have a guy who limps in the hijack and the blinds check, and that gets to the river. It's like $7, right? 6 or 7.
Yep.
It's insane. But anyways, okay. So you got a hand for us against a Euro, right?
Yeah. Well, he's actually, I think he's Argentinian, but
okay,
same
thing. Euro. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a good game.
Okay.
I would say maybe in like larger pots, I think he might lean more towards the conservative side. But it's a guy who knows what he's doing. So the way the hand goes, under the gun limps.
Okay.
And I'm next to act with 2 aces. None of them are a club. I think it's like a spade or a heart.
Okay.
He is in the cutoff, and he raises my 25 to 90.
So you make it 20. So you make it 25 with ace, right?
Yep.
Cut off to 90. How deep are you guys?
1800.
Just a regular straight 5-5, right? So 5, 25, 90. Okay. Yep.
Then big blind decides to call.
Ooh, cold caller.
Yep. The UTG limper folds out, and I bump it up to 300, and both the cutoff and the big blind call.
What's the deal with the big blind here? Sounds pretty fishy to me, huh?
He's good for a recreational player.
Oh, really?
He's been playing for years, but he's one of those, like play by feel guys.
Okay.
So
25 to 90 cold call. You make it 300, which is just over 3x. This is one of these ones where we have to intuitively figure out what we want to do. You can't really plug this one into a solver to try to, because it's multi-way, and there really isn't supposed to be a cold call range here from the big. The big blind's got 1800 too, I take it, or something like that.
No, he just sat in. He has closer to 1K.
Okay. I mean, I would probably tend to raise a little bit larger here. Okay. And the reason why I would do that is because I feel like there's enough material out there now where people, if you're saying the cutoff is an aware player, there's enough material out there now where people understand that you have a much wider 4-betting range here in this configuration with a cold call in between than you would heads up. meaning that you could have ace queen here. You could have jacks, you could have queens, hands that you would probably just call. Ace king off, right? In this configuration at this depth, if you had ace king off and you made it 25 and the cutoff made it 90 and it went back to you, you're usually supposed to just call. It's probably like 80-20, you know, 4-bet with your ace king suited. But you have a much more robust 4-betting range here. So I feel like you might get a little bit more action, or maybe there's a frequency that this Argentinian guy, especially if he's a pro, is going to do something. For that reason, I might make it more like 350 to 400. But okay, you make it 300 and they both call, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, there's about 905 in the middle, and the flop comes out jack of clubs, 9 of clubs, 4 of spades.
You don't have a club, right?
And I do not have a club.
Okay.
So I wasn't quite sure what the best sizing would be. I mean, I'm really only just concerned about pocket jacks, really. But obviously, it's nice that we can charge some club draws because we're not blocking them. But anyway, I bet 350, and cutoff goes with it, and the big blind folds out.
By the way, I think the big blind could have jacks or nines, and maybe even the cutoff could have nines here, just as a quick little thing. I mean, it's possible. I don't know how often the guy would 3-bet and then, you know, call nines. He might think he's getting a price or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, in this particular spot, you know, he's probably going to have, I don't know, because for you, looking at this in theory, like, you probably don't always 4-bet jacks here. Like, maybe you do it half the time, if not less, right? He probably always has jacks, and he might have some nines, and you're not going to 4-bet nines. So I would say that he has, like, a nut advantage here. It would be interesting to, but you still probably have, like, an equity advantage. I mean, again, we're just looking at this as, you know, also, I mean, you don't have a club in your hand. You know, some of the work that we do when we get in these spots, it's like if you want to check over pairs, it's usually like aces with the ace of clubs. So you bet 350 cutoff calls. Pot is, what, 1605 now. And you guys have like 1,200 left, right? And normally, what ends up happening in the computers, again, we're not playing computers, but just give you a baseline, is the shallower the SPR gets, the more money you're just shoveling in here. You've got one pot size bet left. No, less than that, right? I mean, the pot
not
is,
even.
Yeah. So the pot is 1,600, and you've got like 12 and change-ish left, something like that. Okay, let's go to the turn.
Yeah, I think a little less, more like 1150, but
okay. Yeah,
just same zone.
Yeah.
So yeah, turn comes out ugly. It's a queen of clubs.
Ugh.
Yeah. So I think checking is my only option here. So I do that, and he checks it back.
Let me ask you this question here. What if the turn was like a deuce of clubs? Because again, this is like one of the spots where like you probably still are supposed to bet and get it in theory. The queen of clubs is a very ugly card for you. I think you've run out of value here. And, you know, it's quite interesting if you were to check the turn and he bet, say, like, you know, you've got 1,200 left. Say he bet, like, 500 on the turn into, like, 16, like, leaving you with, like, 500 left. I mean, it's a really, really gross spot. And I might just fold because, to be honest with you, you're protected here by the fact that the other guy is in the hand, right? Like, this guy shouldn't really have many offsuit ace of club combos here. Occasionally, maybe he has, like, ace queen off, but, like, it's really hard for him to call with that other guy in the hand on the flop. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, But anyways, okay, so check. I'm just throwing different scenarios out there. Check. Okay, let's go to the river.
And the river pairs the jack.
Like jack of diamonds or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's like an offsuit jack. So at first, I don't know, I was kind of happy to see it because it cuts down on the jacks that he could have.
Right.
And so I mean, I was thinking now I'm behind about like 5 combos. You got 3 queens, 1 jack, and maybe 1 ace king of clubs.
Yeah, and you say 1 jack too if you assume that the guy is playing decently, like because the jack of club. This is what you look at to try to figure out how many like ace jack hands he would have here.
Yeah. Oh, I meant more like jack specifically.
Right.
Pocket jack.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's 1 combo of jacks. I'm saying like say for example like you've got ace of spades, ace of hearts in your hand. The jack of clubs is out there, right? So that means he can't have ace jack of clubs, right? And now
Right.
Actually, there are no ace jack suited. If the river was the jack of diamonds, like we're gonna put it up here. So if the 2 suits on the board are opposite to your aces, then he has no jacks. Now, if one of the suits matches, like it was the jack of spades, then he could have 1 ace jack.
Right.
King jack suited, queen jack suited. I mean, you would think queen jack would probably start betting off on turn. King jack, I don't even know if it's in there to the 4-bet necessarily. So, yeah, I see what you're saying. It definitely sort of looks scary though. Like, and I wonder what you're gonna get called by here if you were to bet. I still think on the surface,
that's exactly what I was thinking.
I still think on the surface the board is a little bit too dicey for you to bet here and expect to get called by what? Pocket kings, ace queen. But I just don't see how he has ace queen when you bet the flop. I mean, ace queen of spades. If you have the ace of spades in your hand, he can't have ace queen of spades, which would have been like a backdoor. But again, there's a 3rd guy in there, so he's forced to play straightforward. So I think I would probably still check here, running out of value.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Yeah, I ran it by my friends. They said they would check it back too. But then I actually did plug it into a solver.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just assuming like what if it was heads up, and it has us piling it in with aces here.
Has you piling?
Yeah, then I put it.
I mean, it could be. I mean, that could be a function. Like I said. I mean, you have to be very wary though. I mean, the reason solvers are nice to have a baseline, right? And solvers get into these spots live where they will pile single overpairs a lot when the SPR is very low. Like, I don't even know, like, I don't know if you ran the turn simulation, but the turn seems pretty dicey, but it wouldn't surprise me sometimes if they, bet the fucking turn, too. You know?
No, the turn had its checking.
Okay. But like I said, I mean, it's the reality of the situation. It's an interesting baseline. But I think that when people don't play the right ranges and they call too much sometimes or fold too much sometimes, like aces is a jam in the solver because there are certain combos of hands that he's supposed to call with that I don't know if that's reality though. If you take those calls out, then the solver's bullshit, or the solver's not the most EV. Anyways, you checked. What ended up happening at the end?
He checked the back, and I scooped the pot.
Did you ever find out what he had?
I overheard him talking to the dude next to him after the hand, and then he told me, he said he had pocket kings without a club in it.
So, pocket kings without a club, like, I guess that's probably a fold if you shove, according to the solver response. But if he has kings with a club, maybe it's a call. Again, you have to take this stuff a little bit with a grain of salt, right? In terms of where you work it in. But I don't have a problem with the way you played the hand. I appreciate the call. All right, take it easy.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to our next caller, and I believe that we have 2 more callers, and I believe this is Garland, and then we're gonna go to a guy that hit me up in Discord this morning. Less is more. Garland, you're up next.
Hello.
Hello.
I have a hand for you.
Okay.
It was played at Drayton Casino.
Yep.
The 2-5 blind game, 200 to 1,000. I think you can match this big stack after. This hand is effective, $760 effective.
Okay.
This hand is straddled, so there's a $10 straddle. The villain, there's the main villain. The only villain in this hand is very loose pre-flop razor. but he's very passive post flop.
Okay.
For example, he raises with a flush draw from the big blind, but doesn't put in money, doesn't put any aggressive action once he flops a flush draw, for example.
Okay.
So he's very, very loose passive post flop.
Yep.
From my observations. So the action is he's in the cutoff. The villain's in the cutoff. Raises $30.
Okay. That's pretty. So this is 2-5-10, right? 2-5-10.
Yes, correct. There's a $10 straddle.
But it's not straddled every hand.
No.
Okay.
Well, it's straddle off and on. Not everyone's doing it.
All right. So villain makes a 30 in the cutoff. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I wake up in the button with aces, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds.
Hero on button, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds. Okay.
I 3-bet to 100.
Okay.
Everyone else folds. He calls.
Okay.
So it's $207 in the pot.
Mm-hmm.
And the flop comes the King of Hearts, the Queen of Spades,
yep,
and the Jack of Hearts.
Okay.
And I guess I should preface that the way he called, I didn't think he had a big pocket pair. If he had any pocket pair, it might be jacks, but I didn't think he had a big. I don't think he. The way he called pretty fast, I didn't think he had a pocket pair.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my read.
Yep. Okay.
But this flop, right, hit all sorts of two pair combinations.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, hijack just go ahead and moves in.
Cutoff, right? Is he in the cutoff?
Sorry, cutoff goes. Yeah, sorry, cutoff goes moves in.
So this is about a $660 bet into a $207 pot. Is that right?
$660 bet into a $207 pot. Yeah.
So let's look at some math here real quick. See, when you had emailed me this hand, I actually went to Poker Cruncher here, Garland, last night because I wanted to look at this. Of course, I didn't know the background that you just said that he's usually not driving draws, right? So a lot of people get a little bit confused about this. Like, you don't usually get into the spot and hold'em when you're dealing with such a large sort of bet size, right? And people get confused about the math, about how they do math out with equity needed. Now, this one's a little bit of a complicated one, but you get into situations where, first of all, even if there's nothing in the pot, if somebody bets 100 into 0, where the pot's 100 to call, your equity is 50%. You're getting 1-to-1. Normally in No Limit, when you're dealing with a pot size bet, if someone bet 200 into 200, the pot would be 400, 200 for you to call, right? So you'd be getting 2-to-1, which means you need 33% equity. When you do it in terms of pot odds, it's 2-to-1, so you basically take 1 plus 2 and put that over the total, 1/3, and that's how you get your equity. Now, in a situation where if somebody were to bet 200 into 200, a shortcut way to do that as well is you put your call into the pot and then put your call amount over the total pot, including your call, to figure out the equity needed. So if someone bet 200 into 200, you add your 200 into the pot, you get 600, you put your call over the total pot, 600, and you get 33%, which is what your equity is needed. So what we would do here is we would add our call to the pot, which would be about 1320, and then add the 200, which is in there, so that's 1520, and we'd put 660 over 1520 to basically get our equity, which is probably, I'm going to go to a calculator here, somewhere in the low 40s, 43.4%. That's how we do it. That's how you do it, whether it's pot odds or equity. I like to just convert pot odds. I know the amount in my head. I know that 2-to-1's 33, 3-to-1's 25, 4-to-1 is 20. But people will get confused sometimes where they'll think 4-to-1 means 25. No, it doesn't. 4-to-1 means 1 out of 5. You actually have to add them and that's what your chances are. Your odds are 4-to-1, but 1/5 is your equity. So you need 43% here. So I had the luxury in going back and looking this in Cruncher, and I was like, this is interesting. Let me plug in all 2-pair types of hands like Queen Jack, King Jack, King Queen, and I put the suited varieties. And then I was like, would this guy have like a hand like the nut flush draw, like ace 5 of hearts, ace 9 of hearts, something like that. And then I had put in like a couple combos of jacks, but even if you were to throw those out, with a range of 2 pair and occasionally the nut flush draw, it's probably pretty close. Where it becomes a slam dunk call is if you were to ever make this play with a hand like king 10 or queen 10 or jack 10. Okay? I think we can throw out like ace 10 and 9-10 as an upfront shove. If he were to turn his hand over, if you think he always has 2 pair here, and this is what this represents basically, you don't have the equity. And I looked at that one too because you've got an overpair that 2 pair can get counterfeit by. Plus you have a gut shot. I think it's 37 or 38%. Aces against like queen jack. It's all the same, right? So if he were to turn his hand over and he has 2 pair, then you fold. So you have to find draws here in order to make this call if you don't think that he's ever doing this with a hand like a pair plus 10 or a flush draw. What did you think?
Well, okay, so first of all, I don't have the ace of hearts, right? So I'm
Right.
blocked.
That's what I'm saying. Right.
One
Yeah.
of the things I thought about.
Yeah.
Right. But then I realized, I mean, he's not driving draws. So he's more likely to just check and call and hope to get there. So I really put him on 2 pair, which means I have 9 outs to, gut shot aces or counterfeit his 2 pair, which is about the equivalent of a flush draw. I'm not getting the odds to draw to a flush, for example. I'm not getting, 3-1. So this was a pretty easy fold for me.
Well,
I folded.
yeah. What I was gonna say is I'm actually going back here. I wish I could show you guys, but I don't have Cruncher. Basically, I don't have Cruncher captured. But what I was gonna say is that if it's all 2 pair, let me just look at this real quick. You're 38%. You're a little bit better than a flush draw. But yeah, always thinks it's 2 pair, but you don't have to find that many draws here to make this call, especially if you dismiss all sets. Kings, queens, and jacks, like only a few. So I think it's a lot closer than people think. Did you ever find out what he ended up having?
Yeah, I did. So I offered $5 to show his hand.
Yeah.
As per my norm, he shows the king of spades, queen of diamonds. Then he gives me the $5 back.
Well, nice. But again, it's actually pretty close. Also, too, like a hand like ace, queen of hearts, queen 10 of hearts. If I plug in king, jack suited plus here into Poker Cruncher, and I'm going to also put in ace, queen of hearts. Again, I have the Poker Cruncher for Mac, which is a little bit more robust than the Poker Cruncher like on the iPhone. If I throw ace, queen of hearts and queen 10 of hearts in here as well, the equity, that can't be right. Did I do that right? Let's see here. Queen 10 suited, ace, queen of hearts. Your equity only goes up to like 40. It barely goes up. It's still like 60-40 because those hands have like a shit ton of equity, ace, queen of hearts, and queen 10 of hearts. So
I guess I forgot the turn. The turn and the river compare, so I could counterfeit that way too. So
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Garland, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to our last caller here. This is Less is More. And then we're going to wrap things up for today. What's up, buddy?
How's it going?
Good.
Good. Okay, so this is a 2-5 hands at WinStore.
Okay.
1.8K effective. I've been at the table about 3 hours at this point. Hadn't done anything too crazy. I to this point, I've just coolered a few people. So, max buy-in at WinStar is 600 for the 2-5.
Okay.
But the villain in this hand was in a big blind. He was a 50-year-old, really nitty. He was in a Hawaiian shirt. Definitely did not give off the grinder type at all. But he was very straightforward post flop. So kind of the information I had going into the hand.
Okay.
So hero opens king, queen of hearts from the hijack.
This is just
20?
straight 2-5, no straddles, no antes.
No straddle.
I think that the future of live no limit is definitely three blind games. Now that I play a lot of three blind games, so much better than just like a straight two blind game. But so you open a 20 in the cutoff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then the villain in the big blind just flats.
Okay.
Yep. So 40 in the pot. The flop is ace of spades, jack of hearts, eight of clubs.
So you have a gutter here and a backdoor heart draw, right? King, queen of hearts?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and to this point, I'd seen him fold a lot to down bets. There were some good regs at the table who were down betting on the flop a lot, and every hand I had seen him involved in, he was just obviously overfolding.
Uh-huh.
So, looking back, I could have gone for like a mixed strategy with a half pot or 2/3 sizing, but just in my mind at that point was he folds a ton, and I think he would just, snap muck like 8-7 or, pocket sixes or whatever. So I bet 10 into 40 here.
Wow, okay. So check and you bet 10. That's real. I mean, I understand where you're going with this, but again, it's one of these things where you don't. You sometimes when you bet super small in these particular situations, some spazzy stuff happens where I mean, if you're going to bet 10, he's supposed to call, well, definitely with any straight draw. So all you're doing really is getting hands like random low connecting cards that aren't paired to fold.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like what I don't.
Yeah, and
so what's the purpose of that? What's the purpose of the bet? Because why not just check it back if you were going to do that? I mean, I think the way that just looking at this hand, I thought you were going to say you bet like 20, and then I was like, oh, this is cool because like you could bet here and then overbet a lot of turns, especially if you pick up hearts because you're blocking ace king and ace queen. He's probably going to raise off. I would still just make a standard $20 to $30 bet, which in itself I understand it as a percentage is a large bet, quote unquote, but it's interpreted as a small bet. If you were to bet 20, it's interpreted as that way. And if somebody calls, then you know they've got an ace or a jack, and you can pound the turn. But to bet 10, I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that is.
Yeah, and looking back, I definitely agree with you. So, yeah, something to think about. But he calls. He thinks for a little bit, 10 seconds, and calls. And then the turn is the eight of hearts.
Okay. So you pick up the...
So pairs the bar.
Yeah, pick up the heart draw. Okay.
Yep, and then he bets 25 into 80.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back to the flop. He min raised my $10 bet.
Okay. Well, that changes things. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you bet 10 into 40, and big blind min raises to 20.
Yes. Yeah.
Which usually is going to be fairly indicative of a hand like an ace.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I was thinking exactly like, some ace-7 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is again, I go back to this, like you see people, you'll have a raise frequency when you bet really tiny, which actually is unintentionally correct sometimes. I don't know if you're raising just like weak aces here in an optimal setting to a 25% pot bet. Probably not. Maybe some with a backdoor, but whatever. So you bet 10, he makes it 20. You call, turns an 8, right?
Yep. Big blind bets 25 into 80, and this is just not indicative of trips here, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. If a rec player turned trips here, I think he would be going bigger. So I raised to 140.
By the way, I want to go back to the flop here because Fosbo in the chat says something that I washed over. How about 3-betting on the flop? I kind of like that. I mean, you bet super small, like you could credibly look like you're actually slow playing something. You're supposed to have some 3-bet bluffs here. You've got king queen. It's probably one of the best non-paired types of hands to do it with. It might be a little bit better if the ace of hearts is out there, giving you like the backdoor nut flush draw. But 3 to a straight flush with king queen of hearts. This guy looks like he's got like ace 4 or some bullshit like that. You can have a set of jacks. You could have ace jack. He min raises 20. Why not make it like 110 to 120 and just pound him on the turn some of the time, or like you're gonna get immediate folds right now? I think that's a good point that I washed over.
I actually like that. This is probably one of the best candidates because I do want to 3-bet with some hands here especially against Rex.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is certainly like one of the best candidates. So
I mean,
yeah,
I wouldn't be 3-betting. I wouldn't be 3-betting as a bluff all that often to check raises on the flop on ace high boards. It would have to be like a very specific situation, which is sort of what this is. But okay, so ace of spades, jack of hearts, 8 of clubs, check 10. Min raise to 20, you call, turns the 8 of hearts, you pick up the king high flush draw. Now he bets 25 into 80.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I raised to 140.
Yep.
And he tanks for like 25 seconds and calls.
Okay, so I mean, obviously the very small bet on the turn is still fairly consistent with him having a weak ace where the kicker probably doesn't play, right?
Right.
So I don't really mind the play here because you're going to get a lot of people to fold out. You know what I mean? He's not going to really have an 8. You could actually have an 8 here too. It's kind of funny. I'm not necessarily saying he's thinking of that. But again, when you get into this spot and you raise turn, if he calls, right, and the river's a brick, it's not like you're always supposed to bluff. You could take this line and give up sometimes too. You make it 140 and he calls, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So now the pot is 280, 320, like 350, 360, something like that, right?
Yeah, I have 360.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah. So, and given my flat to his min raise, I just think I have proportionally more 8x than he does.
Yeah, but that doesn't. Yeah, but that's not. Yes, you do. And again, I feel like we're out leveling ourselves like a lot. Yes, that's true. Do you think that he is taking that into account? That you proportionally have more 8x?
No. This was.
Then why would you be worried about it then? Why would it be relevant then?
Well, I'm not saying it was.
I mean, I'm not trying to. I'm throwing. I mean, you brought it up, right? And I think a lot of people get confused in this situation, right?
Okay,
yes, what you're saying is true, but
right.
I don't know if the relevance of it.
If I was talking to like, a guy constructing theoretically optimal ranges and things on each street, then
right. Okay, so
that might be my thought process.
Yeah, so the river's so you get 360 and we roll to the river. Yep.
Yep. River is an offsuit brick. It was a low card, like a 3 or a deuce, I think.
Okay. Yep.
Yep, and then I bet 500 into 360.
So he checks.
He did check, yeah. He snap checked for whatever it's worth.
So you bet 500 into 360. So
yeah,
you are really saying, hey, I've got an 8+ here, right? Pretty much.
Right.
I don't know if maybe there's a possibility that you could have ace jack here too and play it this way. I guess it's possible.
That's certainly possible. I think versus looser opponents, I certainly could do this with ace jack.
I mean, yeah, this is just like whether or not he's going to come off of an ace. The other thing that I would be a little bit concerned with here is that I know you said you opened from the cutoff. If the villain is like, an OMC, he could certainly have ace king or ace queen here, although obviously you block that, right? We wouldn't think that he has ace jack with this sizing. It just concerns me that he called the 140 on the turn a little bit here. Like, I don't know if he's piecing off if you're getting him to fold hands that he called the turn with, these are making some pretty large assumptions, right? Like when you make it 140 on the turn, what do you think he's calling with here? By the way, ace X of hearts is possible as well. I'm looking back at the flop because it's ace of spades, jack of hearts, eight of clubs, eight of hearts. Like, what is he calling with here on the turn when you raise to 140?
Yeah, ace X of hearts is possible. I was thinking, he wasn't. I had seen him 3-bet like once since I'd been at the table, so he could have ace queen, all the ace queen in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, although I do block ace queen of hearts, but
again, I just think this is a situation where, like, my question is what is he calling with on the turn that he's now folding the river to 500? That's just the crux of the.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, if you think he's going to fold off portions of like ace queen and ace king, which he probably shouldn't.
Right. Well, I think he's folding the vast majority of his ace X. Maybe not ace king, but I just don't see this guy. Since he had been at the table, I hadn't shown down any river bluffs, and I know he knows that. So maybe it was a dynamic thing, but I just don't see him, calling off this portion of the stack with one pair.
Well, I mean, people are saying he could fold ace rag again. I go back to if I just think we get a lot of folds of ace rag on the turn. So you can have an approach on the turn of making it 140 with your big draw. Obviously, you can improve to the best hand, right? It's a semi-bluff. And then you make an assumption that he's going to fold off his weaker aces a lot that probably don't play with kickers. But then you get extra information when he calls. So if you think that he would call the turn with a raise and then fold to an overbet some of his made hands, okay. Anyways, what ended up happening?
Yeah, he tanked for like a minute and then folded, said nice hand. Never found out what he had. Probably some middling ace.
Do you think that he's calling the turn with a middling ace?
I think it's quite possible.
Okay.
It's really hard to say, but I knew on the river he did not he didn't have ace jack. Like I don't think ace jack min raises the flop.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that makes a lot of sense to even wreck players.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I agree for sure. Yeah. I just, again, it's when you pop the turn to 140, a lot of these OMC type guys aren't going to call with like an ace that doesn't play. Is sort of what my view is. But anyways, I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us this week. Again, if you want to submit your hand, I got a lot of submissions this whole week. And basically what ends up happening is people will send in hands throughout the entire week. I take the emails and I put them in like a folder to organize them. And then usually on Friday or Saturday, I start to get back to people about whether, and actually I got to all the emails. I'll even give little comments too. So if you send an email in, usually look around Friday or Saturday. And if it's going to be chosen, I'll put it up. I'll give you instructions as to how to call in. The thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense is to email me on Monday. I got 3 emails today because you can't get on the show that week. And then it's going to be a whole nother week before, you could possibly get on the show and people forget and stuff like that. But that's, the sweet spot is like Thursday or Friday for the email. But anyways, guys, thank you for getting around here. Somebody asked me about Live at the Bike. I think I'm playing in the Barry Woods game a week from Thursday. And check out my main event vlog that's up. I've got part 2 coming out on Friday, I believe, of this week. And if you're new to the site, check out the live training video that I put up. All this stuff is up on YouTube. And if you want to play on a real money app, check out PKC. 3 Blind Games with an Ante. Information about that in the description. All right, guys. Have a good week.
See, you wanna be low, then you'll get smoked. And I hope that your fans understand when you talk about spraying me. The same records that you're making is paying me. Motherfuck Dre, motherfuck Snoop, motherfuck Death Row. Yo, and here comes my left blow. Cause I'm the EAZYE, and this is the season to let the real motherfucking G's in. You're like a kid, you found a puppy, now you're dapper. But tell me where the fuck you found the anorexic rapper. Talking about who you go squabble with and who you shoot. You're only 60 pounds when you're wet and wearing boots.
Damn, E, they tried to fade you on Dre Day.
But Dre Day only meant Easy's payday. All of a sudden, Dr. Dre is the G thing. But on his old album covers, he was a she thing. So nigga, please don't step to these motherfucking real G's.
Every day it's a new rapper, claiming to be dapper than the Dre-ster. Sober than a bitch, but betrayed the role of gangster. Ain't broke a law in your life, yet every time you rap, you yap about the guns and knife. Just take a good look at the nigga and you'll capture the fact that the bastard is simply just an actor who mastered the bang and the slang and the mental of niggas in Compton, Watts, and South Central. Never ever once have you ran with the turf, but yet in every verse claim you used to do the dirt. But tell me who's a witness to your fucking work? See, you never handle business, so say the drama jerk. Niggas straight kill me, knowing that they pranksters. This is going out to your studio gangsters. See, I did dirt, put in work, and many niggas can vouch that. So since I got stripes, I got the right to rap about that. But niggas like you, I kinda hate ya, cause I'm just tired of suburban niggas talking about they come from projects, knowing you ain't seen no parts of the streets, G. Think you started trying to bang around the top of the beach, streety, wearing khakis and mine while you rhyme, little fag, try to sing, but you're flooding at the same time, and your set don't accept ya. Scared to kick it with your homies, cause you know they don't respect ya. So nigga, please check nuts before you step to these motherfucking real G's.
Well, it's the knockout definition, original baby gangster. Approach me like you hard motherfucker, I'ma bank ya, shank ya with my fucking shank if I have to. Dr. Dre and Snoop Doggy Dogg are fucking actors, pranksters, studio gangsters, busters. But this time you're dealing with some real motherfuckers. Jeez, nigga, please don't try to step, cause if you do, then the bill cap is all that would be left. See, young niggas like me, I'll break you off something. Claiming my city, but Dre, you ain't from Compton. Niggas like y'all is what I call wannabes, and ain't shit compared to real motherfucking G's.
I never met an OG who never did shit wrong. You tried to diss the Eazy-E, so now, nigga, it's on you and your doggy dog. Think that y'all hogging shit. Both of you bitches could come and suck my doggy dick. Beating up a bitch don't make your shit, but then again, some niggas think it makes a man. Damn, it's a trip how a nigga can switch so quick from wearing lipstick to smoking on chronic at picnics. And now you think you're bigger, but to me you ain't nothing but a bitch ass nigga that ain't worth the food stamp. And at death row, I hear you getting treated like boot camp. Gotta follow your sergeant's directions or get your ass popped with the Smith and Wesson. Learn a lesson from the E's. Stay in your place and don't step to real motherfucking G's.
Boy, you should have known by now. Easy.